Access Vikings podcast out here at the Minnesota State Fair. If you're listening, you probably know us already, listening or watching, but if you're here in person, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. Ben, how about we have you go first?
Sure. Ben Goessling, been covering the Vikings. I think this is year 14. I don't know, Andrew, I'm not sure how many years we've been out here doing this, but quite a few, I think, at this point. So, yeah, looking forward to another fun day at the fair.
It is. It's been quite a few. Years, Ben. I think we've done this maybe 4 or 5 times at the fair, and I think the lip balm gets better every time at the Star Tribune booth. But I'm Andrew Krammer. Been covering the team for, I think, about 10 years now for the Star Tribune.
Oh, it's longer than that.
12 years, 13 maybe total.
Don't shortchange yourself.
But, hey, this might be the year, Vikings fans. It might be.
And I'm Emily Leiker. I'm our newbie around here, and this is my first year at the Minnesota State Fair, which Ben and Andrew both said they were going to rib me for my reliance on the park and ride earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you came in like, oh, don't worry, the parking, I'm almost there. The parking ride is a little slow this morning. It's surprising. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a state fair.
The line told me it was surprising. Everyone in line said it's not usually that long.
It happens to everybody at least once. So it's another welcome to Minnesota moment for you.
For sure. Well, we're here to talk Vikings, all things Vikings. We're gearing up for their season opener on Monday, September 8th against the Bears in Chicago on Monday Night Football. The 53-man roster was set earlier this week. Let's just kind of look big picture, talk big picture about this team for a minute. Obviously, the big news that I'm sure many Minnesotans care a lot about this week was that Adam Thielen, the wide receiver, the Detroit Lakes native, returns. Ben, you were
former Star Tribune State Fair Access Vikings podcast guest, Adam Thielen.
Always a local.
Yes.
Wait, what year? Was that 2013?
I was trying to. No, it was more recent than that. I was trying to figure out what year that was yesterday. I was trying to pull a picture of it for the Access Vikings newsletter, but I couldn't for the life of me remember what year it was. I would bet like 18 or 19.
Definitely. Oh, you thought it was after his star rise?
For sure, because it was after I got to this trip, which was in 17.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think he was. He's one of us. He can still show up to the State Fair.
Ben, you were on top of reporting that from the beginning when that first went in motion. Ultimately, what did that trade look like when it came to be Wednesday morning?
Well, they had to get creative with it because the Panthers the whole time were looking for more draft pick compensation than the Vikings were willing to give. I mean, I heard there was a third-round pick demand, at least early, from the Panthers, which was going to be more than the Vikings were going to do. I think the thought the whole time was they were going to end up in the neighborhood of a fifth-round pick, and they had to get creative because it ended up being the equivalent of a fourth, I suppose, but the Vikings didn't have a fourth, so they had to come up with some of the pick swap things that they ended up doing to get it done, which is, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has done a lot of these trades with pick swaps that seems like it's become a pretty common way that they get trades done. So I think the landing on the compensation is specifically that they figured out took a while because the Panthers said, hey, this is a guy that still matters on our offense, and we're not going to just give him to you for free because you need somebody and he's one of you. One of us, credibility only goes so far. But they had to get that done, and then Adam Thielen, my understanding, ended up restructuring his contract to take, I don't know the specifics exactly yet, but he took a little bit of a reduction from that $7 million cap number that he had in Carolina to help the Vikings a little bit with their cap. So there was a lot to get done on this, more so than your typical deadline deal. Not the biggest deadline deal during State Fair week that the Vikings have made. Shout out Sam Bradford. Shout out Andrew Krammer for full and double duty on that story. But it's they get it done, and Adam Thielen's back.
Well, Ben, we saw the video with Adam Thielen and his kid, his 4-year-old daughter, Cora, and just how excited they were. I couldn't tell who was more excited, though, Cora or Adam, when he was talking to us yesterday at TCO, because Adam Thielen was talking about how I knew this was a real possibility. This would never happen again. I thought when I came back here, I'd be talking to you guys on a one-day contract, retiring as a Viking. But he comes back now to play for them. What kind of role should we expect from him right out of the gate?
I think he may start week 1. I mean, I don't think it's impossible that he's in the starting lineup on Monday night against the Bears because he knows the offense. He's had some reps with J.J. McCarthy, not in training camp, not in pads, not with defensive backs there, but he has worked with them at least a little bit in some of their summer practices out in Woodbury. So I think there's a good chance he's going to play a lot. I think whether it's wide receiver 2 with Justin Jefferson, maybe it's a little bit less than that. It'll probably depend on how much they've changed in the offense and how much he needs to get up to speed on. But I think he's going to be a pretty big factor for them early, and I think it's part of the reason they gave up as much as they did to get him here, because they need somebody that can jump in and play pretty quickly.
Yeah, Emily and Adam had a little bit of juice left in Carolina, at least. He averaged 60 yards a game. So, I mean, we saw all camp how their wide receiver depth just led to this moment.
Right. I mean, they're going to be without Jordan Addison for the start of the season. He's missing those first 3 games. Yeah, we should pull that closer. He's missing those first 3 games due to his suspension. And then behind him and Jefferson, you have Naylor, who was expected to do a lot, and now has a hand injury that is week to week. So we're kind of waiting to see if Naylor will be involved. I don't think we're thinking that he'll be around week 1 yet, but we haven't seen him in a while. So there's that to wonder about. And then behind them, there's not really anyone who stepped up enough in the preseason to feel comfortable about them in the regular season.
Yeah, that's it. Just whether it was Naylor's injury, I do find it interesting that we heard Kevin O'Connell praise at really over and over Jordan Addison's training camp up to this point. So if Jordan didn't get suspended, is Adam Thielen here?
That's a great question. I mean, and Jordan Addison was the guy that they brought in when, I mean, they drafted him in the first round after Adam Thielen left, not saying that one triggered the other, but that's a great question, because I think Jordan Addison is going to be a bigger part of this offense than he's probably been even the first 2 years. He's been a very good wide receiver too, but the fact that Justin Jefferson wasn't practicing meant that Jordan Addison got a lot of work in kind of that top receiver spot with J.J. McCarthy, and I thought Addison had an impressive camp. I thought that the connection the two of them had was especially strong, so I think Jordan Addison is going to be a big piece of this offense. It is very possible that if he's not suspended, maybe Adam Thielen's not here, but they make the deal, and now they have both of them, and I think they'll use both of them quite a bit through the season.
So many factors bring Minnesota's son back home, Adam Thielen.
It's as if it was written in the North Star.
We can talk about another pseudo-Minnesota son, not quite the same level as Adam Thielen, but former Gophers quarterback Max Brosmer.
I thought you were going to say Carson Wentz.
North
Dakotans are not one of us.
We got Stribby here. He's here.
Stribby's one of us.
But we have former Gophers quarterback Max Brosmer made the 53-man roster as an undrafted free agent. He was one of 7 undrafted free agents to make this roster. I mean, just obviously, Max is not expected to play much, if at all, this season. You would not want him to, because he's going to be serving as the emergency third QB.
Right.
But what does he offer from like a development standpoint and like for the future of this quarterback room?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out, because the long term for him is not necessarily that he's ever starting. I mean, and that's nothing against Max Brosmer, but if the Vikings have things go the way they would hope, he never sees the field, because it means J.J. McCarthy is the guy for as long as he is in Minnesota, which they would hope to be a decade plus. So what does that mean for Max Brosmer? I think you develop him possibly into a number 2. I think in some way the best case scenario for them would be he's good enough to be a starter somewhere else and you trade him. I mean, we've seen teams do this where you develop quarterbacks, you turn them into trade chips. Jimmy Garoppolo comes to mind. The Packers did this years ago with Matt Hasselbeck. I think Matt Schaub was a similar type of chip. So, and the Vikings have done this with comp picks. I mean, they've turned Sam Darnold into a comp pick. They've turned Daniel Jones probably into a 4th-round comp pick. I mean, Kirk Cousins was not a guy they developed necessarily, but Kirk Cousins ends up leaving because they feel good enough about being able to replace him that they turn those guys into draft capital. I think if you can trade Max Brosmer and make him somebody that somebody else decides to be a starter, eventually, I don't think that's impossible. I think in the short term, it's if you can turn him into a solid number 2 quarterback that you're not having to try to figure out do we bring in Carson Wentz? Do we trade for Sam Howell in future years? You know, that's probably the short-term hope, and then you think about what his role for another team may be down the road. But, yeah, I think they're excited about him and his potential to develop.
Yeah, Gopher fans would well know Max Brosmer and just kind of how upstanding of a guy he is, how well-spoken, how on top of everything he needs to do he is. He screams backup quarterback in the NFL to me, just in terms of his personality, how he approaches it. He's always he told me earlier in training camp, like, I live here and I have to like kind of tell sometimes coaches, or coaches have to tell me to back off sometimes and be like, hey, man, it's going to be all right.
It's probably a couple quarterbacks in that building that are that way. I think J.J. McCarthy is that way too.
Well, with J.J., I think they're telling Max Brosmer to back off because they need more time with J.J.
Yeah.
Max said, I have to understand I'm not the priority. We come out of college, we're all the guy, right? And then we come here and I have to realize I'm number 4 at the time on this pecking chart. Now he's number 3. But just the way he's so cerebral for such a young guy, it just screams that he could have a 10, 15-year career without even really being a starter anywhere.
It's a great point because a lot of times, and we've seen this, guys can make long careers as backup quarterbacks, not just because they're able to come in and play, and that's a big part of it, that you want somebody that can kind of be the self-starter, pardon the pun, that does well on short notice, doesn't get a ton of reps, and can come in and run the offense. But part of that job is also to help get the starter ready. Yeah. So you see guys like Sean Mannion or Nick Mullins or
Chase Daniel.
A lot of these guys that the people that are now making a living doing YouTube film study. J.T. O'Sullivan is that, where you've been in the league long enough. You've probably Josh McCown.
Yeah.
Josh McCown is a fantastic example of this, where you've played everywhere. You've been in every system. You come in because people say this guy can learn it. He can help the starter. He doesn't have an ego about it. And if we need to use him, he's going to be fine. So, yes, I think that's a great take that Max Brosmer could turn into that type of guy. That could be a very nice, lucrative career if you can make it work.
Max Brosmer, also a fan of the fair. We should bring back
he is.
everything to the fair today, and I will bring that back.
No, he did not pay somebody $5 to get him a donut last year. I got an email from Keith on this week, and he said, hey, I had some gopher that was in line for the Amish donuts thing, and somebody paid me $5 to go get him a donut because I was further up in line or something, and he said it was smaller than a lineman, but looked like the quarterback size. And I'm wondering if it was Max Brosmer. Can you ask him? And this came through on Wednesday, which was a day that, a little bit of levity was not a bad thing for any of us. So I told him this brought a smile on my face. I'm going to ask him about this. So I asked Max Brosmer yesterday about it, and he said, no, that was not me, but I do enjoy the fair.
Oh, the great donut mystery.
Would have been a better story if it was him, but I don't know. I got a kick out of it, so I'll share it anyway. Again, if it's one of these things that when I get talking, you get you start to roll your eyes, just fast forward until you see somebody else's mouth moving. That's why we have video now. It's not for YouTube. It's so that if you get bored with me talking, you have a cue to fast forward until somebody else more interesting takes a hold of the microphone.
Know your audience. Know your audience.
I do. This is a public service I'm providing.
Rest of the 53-man roster, I think one of the things that stood out to us when we looked at it on Tuesday was the cornerback room. Yeah. They really went slim on the cornerback room. Yesterday, General Manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah made it sound like they are not planning to add anyone, at least imminently, to that room.
Vikings Twitter tells me he smirked at my question on this.
I wasn't paying.
I didn't see it that closely either.
But any other positions that were intriguing to us or that we just have some interest in entering the beginning of this season?
Yeah, I certainly think corner. I thought punt returner, the fact they're just going to roll with Miles Price, it would seem. An undrafted rookie out of Indiana who's learning the receiver position, has never played an NFL game before, and coaches just love how kind of steely-nerved this kid is and how confident he is. And so the fact that they're just going to roll with him at that spot, I think is fascinating. You have Isaiah Rodgers, who's a corner who can also do that for the Vikings this year. But in terms of corners, you can't risk getting Rodgers hurt.
No.
Because you guys just talked about it. They've got Jeff Okudah, the former Lions top draft pick, in a top position for them, the number 3 spot in that corner room, which Shaq Griffin played quite a bit last year.
Yeah.
And so we saw Okudah get flagged, be very grabby this summer. I wonder how that's going to go. And then they bring back Fabian Moreau, the veteran who was the number 4 last year. They're right back where they were last year in terms of bringing Fabian back. So I'm fascinated as we go forward here, as we talk to more coaches, to hear what happened with Mekhi Blackman, the 3rd-round pick, who just didn't work out. Zamiah Vaughn was an undrafted rookie who they kept on the practice squad, but they just don't have a ton of options right now at that corner spot.
Yeah, I mean, Zamiah Vaughn, I think, was a guy that, I think I had him on my 53. I thought there was a good chance that he made the roster. I mean, Dwight McGlothern would be a guy that you'd hope would take a little bit of a step forward here, and there's going to be continued investment at that position, I think. I mean, they can talk about big nickel. They can talk about we've got safeties that we use, and they do. I mean, they use Josh Metellus a lot. Harrison Smith will play a lot. You have guys that you can use at that position. I think Theo Jackson's going to be involved quite a bit as well. And maybe you bring somebody up. Maybe it's Fabian Moreau. Maybe Khalif Halassi, a guy that we saw a lot in camp, ends up playing a bigger role throughout the course of the season. But I think they're going to continue to need to look for help there. I can't imagine, given the way they reacted last year in a similar depth situation and how much they said we need to go get help. We need to just get more people in here that can play this position. I can't imagine they're not going to continue to look for those options this year.
Let's take a look at the schedule a little bit, or talk about the schedule. We don't have it. Not a look. I can put it up on the screen, I guess, but we're not looking at it right now. What do you guys think is
fix it in post.
Either the toughest stretch of this schedule or the most interesting stretch of the schedule? They might be the same stretch, because I know what stretch is interesting to me.
Yeah, I think Ben and I actually agree on this, but yeah, go ahead.
On the toughest?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it's coming out of the bye.
Yeah.
It's the 4 games right after the bye, which is similar to where they got tripped up last year when you had right out of the bye, it was Lions and then Rams on the short week. This year, out of the bye, it's the Philadelphia Eagles at US Bank Stadium, the world champions. And then Thursday night, you go to Los Angeles again. This time it's the Chargers. This time it's Jim Harbaugh facing J.J. McCarthy. And then after that, it's the Lions on the road 10 days later. Again, last time they went there, it was a game of some consequence. And then they are home against the Baltimore Ravens, who are a unique challenge to stop because they play a different style of football than just about anybody else in the NFL.
Yeah, that's an incredibly difficult stretch.
Yes, and those 4 teams won 52 games combined last year.
When you look at the Vikings schedule, it seems the NFL schedule makers, and they did this last year with Caleb Williams in Chicago, where it seems like they know who's going to be led by a rookie or a young guy, and they kind of make it easier at the start.
Yeah.
And kind of backload it a little bit. And you're talking about the middle being the toughest, which I would agree. This one happens to be the middle. But you got to get off to a hot start if you're J.J. McCarthy and these Vikings, because it's Chicago, it's Atlanta, 2 incredibly winnable games before you get into the meat of what's happening. And so to me, if they stumble out of the gate at all, we're talking about the middle of their schedule very differently in terms of, can they salvage what they're doing here this year? So I think starting Monday night at Chicago is going to be a huge moment, not just because it's prime time, not just because it's McCarthy, but just because of where these Vikings want to go and because of how that schedule is laid out.
Well, and I think you mentioned the schedule, and there's a lot of years that people will say, well, yeah, this team was good last year. Doesn't mean they're going to be good this year. Yeah. That's true, but especially with the Eagles, the Lions and the Ravens, you're not talking about teams that are fly-by-night. You're not talking about teams that were good last year and who knows what they're going to be. These are teams with some pedigree. These are teams with quarterbacks that I think it's reasonable to assume they're going to be a competitive outfit. Even if they're not 13, 14-win teams this year, they're going to give you a tough day at the ballpark just because of who they are and what they're capable of doing. Those are not going to be easy teams to beat, no matter how effective they are record-wise, unless there's so many injuries that everything changes for them. But you're talking about just that stretch of quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson. That's a lot to deal with for this group.
You would like it if McCarthy amounted to any of those guys.
Oh, no doubt. You would
if
you said there's a comp for J.J. McCarthy, any name on that list, you'd be like, yep. We'll take that. We're happy with that.
That is certainly, I wrote about that stretch in my record prediction, which we'll keep the record predictions for the Star Tribune preview section whenever that is coming out, so keep an eye out for that. But we mentioned, obviously, the Monday night opener against the Bears, NFC North rival there. Let's take a look at the NFC North. Obviously, big movement last night, and Andrew, I'll ask you this. What does Micah Parsons going to the Packers, how does that impact the NFC North?
I think Ben and I both have takes on this one, but I just have to start with Jerry Jones being seemingly incredibly senile and still running an NFL team. It's incredible to me because he just gave away right when the Dallas Mavericks gave away Luka. The poor Dallas fans get to see the Cowboys just give away Micah Parsons for Kenny Clark in 2 1s.
Yeah.
We saw Kenny Clark last year. love him as a player. He was not the same guy last year.
No, he was not.
He is at the tail end of his career, and they basically just gave Parsons away for 2 ones. Packers get to pay him, which they did, $40+ million
paid
a
him
year.
a lot.
An incredible contract. So they are now tied. They are all in for a Super Bowl push. Green Bay is. But I think the Packers just profited off the fact that Dallas is being run by, I don't know, somebody who does not know what they're doing, clearly.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you talk about the 2 ones, everybody's like, yeah, they give up 2 first-round picks. If they're as good as they're hoping to be, those picks are late in the first round. So you gave away Micah Parsons in the prime of his career for picks that could be 26 or later,
it's just
and a defensive tackle that's coming into the tail end of things. Yeah, it just in the history of lopsided trades involving the Dallas Cowboys, it will not eclipse the famous Herschel Walker trade.
Nothing will.
Nothing will probably ever again in the NFL. But the, smack yourself in the face nature of this one is significant, I would say.
The only good news for the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy on that front is they don't face Green Bay till week 12 this year.
Yeah.
So J.J. will get at least some experience before he faces Micah Parsons. And look, Green Bay doesn't have many corners. They got rid of Jair Alexander, so they need to rush the passer, and I think they will, but at least young JJ doesn't need to see Micah for quite a while.
Yeah, there is some of that. I mean, one other thing on the schedule, we talk about where the league kind of puts it. I do think sometimes with young quarterbacks, too, you see the primetime matchups come early because it's, this guy's interesting early. Yeah. And there's no doubt those first 2, when they're playing other quarterbacks that he was in the same draft as, those are built-in storylines for the broadcast partners. And let's be honest, the schedule is built for the broadcast partners. The schedule is built because of what TV wants. So you get J.J. McCarthy going home to face Caleb Williams right away. Week 2, it's J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix, the 2 quarterbacks who were drafted by different teams to replace Kirk Cousins, who will get to watch both of them compete against one another at US Bank Stadium, his former home. But a lot of those things, I think, come early because these quarterbacks are still interesting, and if it's a team that's not very good, maybe there's less of that as we go through the season. I think everybody expects the Vikings are going to be good, but I think sometimes you see the young teams with young quarterbacks get put in primetime positions early because of that. It's those 2, and then they get, I think it's Nance and Tony Romo week 3 against the Bengals, and then the 2 games internationally. So a lot of exposure for the Vikings early, I think in part because of the J.J. McCarthy storyline.
Let's talk about Caleb Williams and the Bears for a moment. Caleb Williams, is he going to be better this year? Do we think there's going to be an improvement? Obviously, Ben Johnson, the former offensive coordinator for the Lions, is now there as the head coach. Switched up the staff, switched up some personnel stuff in there. But can Caleb Williams make this Bears team good?
I mean, I think he'll be better. I think Ben Johnson is good for him. I think the situation he was in with different coordinators and different coaching staffs, I mean, all of that is very difficult on a young quarterback. It's difficult on anybody, but I think that helps. I think the fact that they invested in their offensive line to the degree that they did helps because that's been a group that has not had a very good line in a long time. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of how Seattle has treated some of its quarterbacks over the years. Frankly, how the Vikings have treated some of their quarterbacks over the years. But I think that helps. I think Ben Johnson is a better play caller, better schemer for Caleb Williams than they've had. I'm still not sure about the Bears, though. I mean, I think they're going to be better, but are they going to be able to compete in this division as tough as it is and as good as loaded with defensive talent as all of 3 of these other teams are when you talk about Aiden Hutchinson, now Micah Parsons, the folks the Vikings have, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, the 2 defensive tackles, etc. That's still going to be a lot for the Bears to handle, and I want to see it before I believe it.
Yeah, I love Chicago's talent. I love their coaching staff that they now have in place, but the question is can Caleb Williams grow up and be an NFL quarterback?
Yeah.
Before that's when the Vikings would have to really take them seriously, is when he is the problem. And we saw last year when we went to Chicago, he forced overtime in that game, threw for 340 yards, played backyard football. There was one where Van Ginkel was unblocked, and he just makes a miss and throws deep down to DeAndre Swift. there's moments where Caleb Williams can just really lift a team. But then you read comments like Taron Armstead had a comment on a podcast where he was talking about the former Saints and Dolphins offensive tackle. He was at Bears-Dolphins joint practices, and he said, I saw Caleb. He still can't read defenses. He still was getting kind of puzzled by things at the line, and he was not doing what he needs to be doing. That's just one guy's opinion and one practice. But if he can't do those things, like that's the same stuff we saw last year, where when Caleb went to U.S. Bank Stadium, Brian Flores put him in a blender. The Bears were not the same team in Minnesota that they were in Chicago when the Vikings faced them. So I think Caleb has a lot of room to grow as a quarterback, and that's when the Vikings would really have to worry about them at that point. So to me, Chicago is just a talented team that kind of needs to mature.
Yeah, backyard football, as we've seen many times, only works for so long.
Yeah, yep. We had a Packers fan in the audience here pointing to us, giving us the high five. Yep, they're happy about Micah Parsons out here.
You guys excited about Micah Parsons? Very uncharacteristic move for the typically buttoned-down Green Bay Packers, but yeah.
I don't know which one of you wrote this in the outline
I
for
did.
today.
I did. Yeah, it was me.
So then, Andrew, this is your question. I wrote what to expect from Detroit, and you said in all caps, can Kevin O'Connell shed the boogeyman?
Because he has not beaten Detroit.
No, you're right. You're right.
Since the first game he faced them of his tenure.
The Matt Patricia Vikings outreach plan is gone, and it's not as easy to beat that team twice every year anymore. I mean, Mike Zimmer ran into that towards the end, too, when the winless Lions went down and beat them, and that's probably part of the reason Kevin O'Connell has his job is that game. And the fact that Kevin O'Connell now has to deal with the Detroit Lions is, I suppose, the other shoe dropping. But, yeah, they have had a really, really tough time with that team. I think they beat them in
28-24, last second, KJ Osborne.
Yep. Week 3, I think.
Yep.
That's the only time, yes?
Yeah, they've lost 5 straight to Detroit.
Because the other one in Detroit in 2022, I think they had a chance. It was going to be a hat and T-shirt game. I remember that line. And Justin Jefferson, I think, broke the regular season franchise record for receiving yards. And that was the game where they got carved up enough that Kevin O'Connell started to be a little louder about some of the things with the defense that did not make him terribly happy. And they have not beat them since.
Well, I do think if they're going to beat Detroit, the Vikings, after losing 5 straight, this might be the year.
Yeah.
Because they lose Ben Johnson, they lose Aaron Glenn to be the head coach of the Jets. The brain drain around Dan Campbell is pretty real. And so we saw it with Philadelphia, where they went through a little bit of a lull when they lost Shane Steichen and some of their, I think Jonathan Gannon off their first Super Bowl. Didn't take them long to get back to the top, obviously, the Philadelphia. But if you're the Vikings, you got to take advantage of the fact that Detroit should be going through some of that. Their starting center,
that's the other big piece of this.
Victoria, Minnesota's own Frank Ragnow, retired. He was playing through critical injuries every year. That guy was one of the toughest people you'll ever meet. And so him retiring is going to be huge loss for Detroit. And so if their offensive line isn't the same, if their coaching is not the same, this could be the year the Vikings finally take them, because on paper, the Vikings roster is better than it was last year, on paper.
No doubt. I think it's the year that you would feel like there's a chance to beat them at least once.
Yeah.
You know, you're probably not thinking that is a sweep. I mean, that would be – I think if they get one win, they'd be happy with that. Maybe you beat them Christmas Day at home at U.S. Bank Stadium. I think that trip in the middle of that stretch that we're talking about in the schedule – with the November game is a lot. I mean, facing them when you face them there, I mean, that is coming off of a mini bye, I guess, so you get that, but it is in the middle of a very, very tough stretch. So if they beat them Christmas Day at home and take one win from them, that's an improvement. I think they'd be happy with that.
Right, that's what I was going to say, Ben, is that where these games against the Lions fall on the schedule still brings up worry for me, even with what you were saying about the roster being better on paper for the Vikings and just the changes that the Lions have, because it's in that stretch and then it's late in the season and we don't know what either of these teams are going to look like late in the season. Like, we've already dealt with some Vikings injuries in training camp to some of these older guys, have things going on. Like, you just don't know by week 16, 17, 18 what these teams are going to look like.
And especially Detroit. It feels like Detroit every year is just a mash unit, because
but last year they certainly were by that point.
Because didn't we hear again the training camp stories of them getting into fights Just they practice and play hard, which doesn't age well all the time.
No, it doesn't. We have some experience with that with another former Bill Parcells Dallas assistant practicing that way and it taking its toll by that time of the year.
We can call Mike Zimmer out.
Yeah. Well, everyone knows who we're talking about,
the
but
Minnesota State Fair.
the connection to Dan Campbell there is one. And Dan Campbell, who once interviewed for the Vikings offensive coordinator job under Mike Zimmer, I think. One of several that applied for that job over the years. But, there's a lot of things Dan Campbell does really, really well. But I think that is one of those pieces of the puzzle with him that, you may run into some of those things late in the year.
Well, and on this topic quickly of the division and talking about the Vikings in 2025, how much do you expect them to contend within this division? I mean, we said we'll save our record predictions for StarTribune.com. Everybody, please go check that out. But, Ben, how much do you expect them to contend, considering that when we had Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM, on this very show back in June, he couldn't come up with a good comparison for what this team is asking McCarthy to do, which is to come in before taking an NFL snap and lead a team that they think is not only playoff worthy, but title worthy within a window.
Right. I mean, a team that won 14 games last year is turning things over to a guy whose first NFL pass of the 2025 season will be his first in an NFL game.
That's crazy.
In his career. It is. Yeah. Is there a precedent for that? I mean, I'm trying to think. No, I'm trying to think if I can rack my brain and come up with one. I go back to like Brian Griese with the Broncos, maybe after John Elway. I mean, you're talking like legendary quarterbacks that retired typically or at the top of their game, maybe after Peyton Manning is done with the Broncos when they, go to Brock. But that wasn't even brand new. Like, that's not the same either. So it is very rare. And what they are counting on from him, no matter what you do to make life easier, which I think they're going to do everything they can to do that. I think they're going to run the ball more. They have veterans literally in every spot other than left guard around J.J. McCarthy. I think they're going to try to make things as easy as they can for him. But you are still going to have moments where it's 3rd and 8 or you're in a 2-minute drill with a game on the line or a season on the line possibly that you have to come up with answers. And that's a lot for a 22-year-old to take on. He doesn't seem afraid of it. He's won a lot at every level he's been at. And he doesn't seem like he's daunted by the possibility of doing it again, but it's not high school, it's not college, it's the NFL. And especially when you get into the playoffs, there is not a lot of margin for error, and there's not a lot that young quarterbacks typically find is terribly easy for things to go their way.
We should mention, JJ was elected a captain this week.
Yeah.
Obviously, that does not account for everything you're talking about, Ben.
Right.
But he does have this team behind him. Like, this team, all the way up to its oldest players in Harrison Smith and some of the guys up there, have bought into him as a leader and a captain and are willing to do what he asks of them in the huddle. There is not a disconnect between them and, I don't know if I want a 22-year-old to be my quarterback.
Yeah.
So, that counts for something. It doesn't count for everything, and there's still going to be on-field tests, but that is certainly what you want to be hearing when you are thinking these things entering the season.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it'll just be interesting to see, because when we threw it out there to Kwesi, I remember we mentioned Trey Lance and the Niners, too, about a comp, and he pushed back on that and said, no, we're different than the Niners, and he didn't want to really get into it. But I do think, Ben, when you talk about making it easy on McCarthy, this is set up to make it easy on him. They are set up to run the ball. They are set up to play very good defense. It'll be fascinating to see how many of these games they can win 24-20 or 17-10, because it seems like this is that kind of group, how they're set up to win.
I think in a perfect world they win a lot of those types of games, and he has a lot of days where he's 15 of 22 for 210 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Man, this sounds like Kirk Cousins Vikings with Mike Zimmer.
Yeah, I think we are going to see something closer to that than we've seen since then, because what changed with those teams is they put all their resources into the passing game, even if they did it begrudgingly, or the head coach did it begrudgingly. The defense got older. They had to go win games in more high-scoring situations, and then Kevin O'Connell comes in and it's, I want to throw the ball. And, I think there's still going to be a lot of that. But my question will be, is Kevin O'Connell capable of fully embracing this shift for 17 games and say, let's run the ball a lot more? I'm curious to see how that goes. But, I think the way they are set up, I mean, everything we've heard, I think they want to run a lot of play action, a lot of bootleg stuff, a lot of half-field reads, make things as easy for him as they can until he's got just more time in the seat. You get closer to the Malcolm Gladwell thing about 10,000 hours. I think there is some of that. They're trying to make those first few thousand hours as easy as they can for him.
Like Josh McCown told us, Ben, that time and reps, those are the only things we cannot give McCarthy right now this summer. We can give him everything else, talent, the right coaching and all this stuff, but it'll just take time. Yep,
and I think, they've talked about this too, where it's like, if he makes mistakes in week 3 or, they're in London and it's raining in week 5 or something like that, they're not going to panic about that. And there's going to be a lot of that in the fan base where people are like, hey, he didn't make a play in this game and we lost because of it, and it's a team that is trying to contend for a playoff spot.
The week-to-week knee-jerking.
Yeah, there's going to be that. But I think their eyes are open on this, where they understand the week-to-week knee-jerking is difficult to do with a 22-year-old quarterback that has not played. I think this is very much, we are in this for the long-term development of this player, because that is going to be what determines the livelihoods of Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, is whether this player becomes the answer that they are hoping he will be at the position.
Yeah, we could talk about Kwesi's drafting ad nauseum and all the draft picks they've cut, but if they hit on J.J. McCarthy, none of that matters.
If they find their answer to Fran Tarkenton, which is what we're talking about, I mean, in terms of a franchise quarterback, the last one they had on the magnitude that J.J. McCarthy is, or what they're hoping he's going to be, played for this team 50 years ago. So, I remember talking to Ron Wolf about this once, that for all the draft mistakes you make, if you're the guy that found the quarterback that's there for 10, 15 years, Bill Polian talks about this as well, nobody remembers the other stuff, because you can live off of that forever.
Lewis Seen who?
Yeah, nobody will care. If you're the guy that found J.J. McCarthy, if you're the guy that found the quarterback that takes you to a Super Bowl, like, we will stop asking him about the draft picks because we'll be busy covering the bronzing of the statue outside U.S. Bank Stadium. I mean, seriously, that's the payoff that awaits if this all works the way that they hope it does. Now, that's a big if.
Another season of hope for the Minnesota Vikings.
Right, but if they get it all to go, the minor quibbles about Lewis Seen and Brian Asamoah will not. They will be tossed to the dustbin of history.
That's a footnote in the story. If
Yes.
That all happens.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. I'm going to audible us a little bit and skip us ahead a couple sections on our outline and ask you guys. We've all done a lot of reporting over the past few weeks for some big stories that we're working on. I know that in writing mine, there's a lot that had to get left out. That I had found out from different people I talked to. So I'm curious, what's the most interesting tidbit or story that each of you had that you did not get to include in one of your stories? I'll give you a minute to think. I'll share mine.
Yeah, I got to think about this a little bit.
I'm writing about Donovan Jackson, the Vikings' first-round pick this year. He was chosen number 24 overall, left guard. Talked to his mom, wonderful woman. We met up before the Vikings-Patriots preseason game, and she was in a bedazzled Donovan Jackson jersey, had this great metallic purple lip gloss on. You may have seen from the game before. She went a little viral when she teared up as her son was taking the field for the first time. But she did not come from a sports background at all. All of his sports background is from his dad. She went to performing arts school in Cincinnati, I believe. They're from Ohio, or her family's from Ohio. And she wants Donovan to do a jazz hands celebration whenever he gets a pancake. And she's been asking him for years. She's been asking him, if you get a pancake today, can you do a jazz hand? And he always says, no, Mom, like, I'm not going to do that. But
Donovan Jackson, the 300-pound rookie, doing jazz hands. That would be incredible. I feel like his offensive line teammates might disown him.
It's like putting a kick me sign on an offensive lineman.
He can't do that. He can't do that. But he should.
Have we ever seen an offensive lineman celebrate anything on the field in that capacity?
No.
If he does it, it'll be incredible.
They used to get fined on previous. Sorry, hold on a second. They used to get fined.
Yeah, the kangaroo court.
Previous offensive lines. They used to get fined if they clapped after like a block, good or bad. If they did the frustrated clap, if they did like a happy, like they used to get fined. Like internally, they would police themselves in such a way where they just it's a show no emotion type position. Yeah,
it's probably changed a little bit. I mean, Riley Reif is not in charge of that room anymore,
right.
But it would be remarkable if it happened. So we look forward to seeing it.
I can't wait. I hope he does.
It fits the vibes of this team. I mean, we're talking
Maybe not
about
Ryan Kelly,
about half the team. Well, yeah, we're talking about half the team. The defense was dancing after every big play they made last year. I think a little jazz hands would be nothing, but he also played drums in middle school, so he was a percussionist.
Oh,
so
nice.
Hey, me too.
He has that background, but. Yeah, that's just a small one that didn't make it in. That I was like, wow, that would be. I can't wait for him to like finally oblige his mom someday, and I'll be like, I know.
Tom Compton was also a drummer, I believe.
Tom Compton was.
He recorded Blink-182 covers with Kirk Cousins.
Long famous line of Vikings offensive linemen.
Playing drums.
Tom Compton. Boy, all right, so I did stories on Ryan Kelly, Josh McCown, TJ Hawkinson. I'm trying to think. Ben, do you have anything quick?
I can tap dance a little bit if that would be helpful.
Yes, yes.
So mine probably takes a little bit of explaining. My big story, I've been working on this idea of the quarterback development industry a little bit, which has changed quite a bit over the last probably 10 years. It's gone on for a long time, but this idea of quarterbacks hiring private instructors and going to all of these camps and these elite tournaments that, I mean, there's the Elite 11 quarterback camp. The number of first-round picks that thing produces is incredible. I think 24 of the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL this year were in that camp, or at least trying to make that final 11 of that camp in some capacity. That includes, I think, 5 of the 6 quarterbacks in J.J. McCarthy's class. It includes everybody but Michael Penix, I believe. So you get this world where the process of becoming a high school quarterback it's a lot different. It's a lot more expensive. It's a lot more time. It's everything happens a little bit earlier. And some of these things are in my story, but I think I'll just for a window into it, J.J. McCarthy has worked with the same quarterback coach named Greg Holcomb since middle school. And that's kind of the age that a lot of these guys start to do it. And Greg Holcomb's son, Sam, is an 8th grade quarterback right now. He already has scholarship offers from Michigan and Purdue, with more coming over the next few years. And J.J. McCarthy and he are very close. And in 8th grade. J.J. McCarthy also got scholarship offers in 8th grade from Iowa State and Indiana. So this is happening really, really early. And one of the things J.J. McCarthy did is he sent him a text message. And I think this actually got edited out of the story, so I'll say it now. Length limits, newspapers, it's 2025, but we still have length limits. Anyway, he sent Sam a text saying, hey, congratulations, but this means nothing. Like, you have to keep working. They are not promising you the starting job. And one of the things that Greg Holcomb has been dealing with from people, just friends saying, hey, you should start thinking about NIL deals for this kid. And he's like, he's in 8th grade.
That's horrible.
He needs to go ride his bike with his friends and not worry about getting paid by a trading card company. So it was just interesting to me to hear. I mean, Max Brosmer talked about this. There are 3rd graders hiring private coaches. Greg Holcomb said, I've got 6-year-olds coming in. I used to turn them away, but now they're going to my competitors. So I say, well, fine, I'm going to take them on. And J.J. McCarthy starts doing more of this stuff in 5th grade. He was an elite hockey player growing up as well, so he kind of had to make the decision between football and hockey, which anybody that's listening, as any hockey parent in Minnesota knows, hockey is a all-in endeavor as well. If you're going to have a youth hockey kid, that's a family decision because your whole family's life is going to be dictated by it. But there are a lot of these things that just happen really, really, really early, and for J.J. McCarthy, it was part of this story. So this question of how much did this shape him and how much of it was him just being the unique, innately designed quarterback that was able to make the best of it was kind of what we got after. And it was pretty interesting to talk to everybody from McCarthy to his dad to Kevin O'Connell to, Kevin O'Connell grew up doing a lot of this stuff too. So Kevin O'Connell's son is starting to do a little bit of this stuff as well and starting to get some private quarterback training. He might end up being more of a baseball player. But, yeah, there's just a lot of this world that I didn't know was quite this intense. And that's kind of been my project for this summer, is diving into a little bit of this to explain what it's like.
An 8th grader is what, like class of 2030?
2030 right now.
2030.
My daughter is starting 8th grade, and she's class of 2030.
Is she getting recruited by anybody?
She is not quite at that level, although Kevin O'Connell, one of the things Kevin O'Connell brought up that didn't make the story is he pointed out the flag football stuff. If it hits, you may see more of this. Now, there's still probably got to be a college world where this becomes a big thing, but it may become that.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin O'Connell is saying that this could be the next wave of this, is that you have girls that are starting to play more flag football, and the chance to take that somewhere may open up a world that looks a lot like this. I mean, he's of the opinion that a lot of this stuff is oversaturated, that he was doing some of these things. He was working out with Mark Sanchez and Jordan Palmer when he was a kid, going up to driving up the coast in California to Mission Viejo to work with quarterbacks there. But there's just a lot more of it on social media now, and that's a lot of what has changed.
My favorite story or anecdote that did not make one of these many stories that you'll find on StarTribune.com from all of us covering the Vikings every day would be about Josh McCown. And he's the quarterback's coach. He played 18 years in the league. He played for 19 different offensive coordinators. Just an incredible run. And he's got a lot of stories to tell. And I talked to all of his quarterbacks about how he talks to them, how he coaches them. And all of them praised his pregame speeches that can get emotional and can pull from his playing days and pull from his life experiences. But Max Brosmer said one play we like to bring up often, actually, is his first game for Kevin O'Connell in 2015. Josh McCown was signed to be the Browns starter under then-coach Mike Pettin. And the quarterback's coach was a guy named Kevin O'Connell on the 2015 Browns. Josh McCown starts the game for them week 1 against the Jets, marches them on a 17-play drive all the way to the goal line. And on a 13-yard run, gets helicopter John Elway knocked out and spun just in and into a top.
This one's for Josh.
Gets spun into a circle and lands, and Brosmer goes, we like to bring that play up and say, hey, coach, what about this one? You like to tell us what to do. You like to tell us all of our life lessons. What about this play where you got knocked out for Coach O'Connell on game 1? And that didn't make the story because I didn't get time to ask Kevin O'Connell, who's a very busy man, about that play, but I thought that was a pretty funny one.
That is pretty good. I would bet you Kevin O'Connell would have a funny anecdote on this, too.
You need to ask him.
We can circle back.
We'll just go back to it and relay it on the podcast later. But I think we're going to wrap it up now, probably, from the Star Tribune stage here at the Minnesota State Fair. But again, we are the Access Vikings crew. We podcast 3 times a week throughout the season. Ben, Emily, Andrew. You can also find all of our work on thestartribune.com, the Star Tribune YouTube page for videos, and then the Strib Sports Instagram also for videos, and then just all the other amazing sports work that comes out of our newsroom. So thanks for hanging out with us, and thanks for listening and watching.